This video is a little bit of a confession. I've made mistakes, I've made quite a lot of them, and with almost 20 years of commercial photography experience, I did expect a learning curve when I took up bird photography, but I thought it would be short and sweet. I didn't realise I was holding on to some outdated and incorrect ideas, and it really slowed my progress. So in this video, you get to learn from my mistakes. I'm going to talk you through what I did wrong and how I went about fixing it. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Flying Parrot Photography. I'm Sonia, this is Morty, and together we're on a path to better bird and nature photography. The first mistake I made was thinking that I had to speed things up because birds move fast, right?
Wrong, so wrong. Great shots need patience and the right timing. Rushing through settings and firing off in haste rarely results in anything other than a rare lucky catch. And besides which, your rushing vibes tend to scare off the birds. I move slowly and deliberately, and I try not to get the dreaded FOMO. I like to observe for a few seconds and check out the background. Then I'll see if I can get in a better position. I try not to worry about missing shots and just let the birds come to me. It sounds a bit woo-woo, but I swear it works. Another mistake I made at the start was thinking I'd got a good enough shot and moving on, instead of waiting that bit longer to catch a TLE that takes the shot to the next level. I really like to take my time if I have a cooperative subject.
My second major mistake was thinking that I had to seek out new locations and new birds to advance my photography, but really, the opposite is true.
Returning to the same places and birds can seem a bit repetitive, but it brings valuable insights about behaviour, the light, the backgrounds, and the best positions at specific times of the day. When I'm on a trip to a new destination, I often don't settle into it until I'm about to leave. I prefer to make at least 2 visits to a new site to familiarise myself with the surroundings and the birds. It really helps me to get better shots.
So I've got to tell you about my emu wren story. I caught a fleeting glimpse of a southern emu wren. This is several years ago, and I was so determined to get a shot of this bird, and I went back day after day at dawn, and it was cold, and I didn't have gumboots back then, and I was in sneakers, and I had wet sneakers outside drying off, and then another dry pair for the next day. And I went back over and over again. This went on for months, and then I'd given up on the emu wrens. I thought, I'm never going to get them. I'm going to stop trying. I'm sick of getting up at dawn. And I had to put my car in for a repair. And while my car was being repaired, it was midday, and I thought, I'll just go for a walk around the wetlands. And sure enough, there were emu wrens absolutely everywhere. It turns out they're not early risers, and this is the value of going back to the same spots over and over again. I can now go and find emu wrens on pretty much any given day because I know their habits and their behaviour. So go back to those same spots and keep working it, because that is where the real gold is.
Which rolls perfectly into my next major mistake. A photographer I admired mentioned that there was only half an hour either side of sunrise or sunset that was any good to photograph birds. Well, that might be true for the best light and okay for the outback and hotter regions, but here in the south it can be very cold and frosty in the early morning, and with no insects on the move until things warm up, that means there's not many birds around either.
Learning to shoot in all light conditions is so valuable. It's definitely much easier to get a beautiful shot when the light is perfect, but unfortunately that's not always when the birds are active, and when you go on a trip you don't always have a choice about the conditions. You've got to make the most of what you've got.
Getting out and practicing in all conditions really pays dividends. I have no hesitation in heading out at all times of the day, which presents different birds and light opportunities. It's all about knowing what will work and what won't. In my recent video linked above, I talk you through my tips for getting a good shot in the middle of the day, and I encourage you to try shooting in all but the very harshest light. It's really important to keep learning, but watch out for my major mistake number 4.
Trying to do too many things at once. My head was swimming with all the tutorials and different settings that I was supposed to remember, and it was detracting from my enjoyment in the field. Hey.
So I decided to just stick to one thing at a time. Getting my shutter speed right, or watching my backgrounds, or remembering to check my settings as the light changes. With just one goal to focus on when I headed out into the field, I could get that one thing figured out and then move on to the next goal without feeling overwhelmed. My next mistake I managed to make twice.
Another major mistake I made at the start was not shooting at high enough ISO, and I was coming home with a lot of soft images. Coming from a commercial and landscape photography background, I thought 800 was a high ISO, so I persisted with this mistake for quite some time before I realized the difference that having a much higher ISO could make. But then I got a bit carried away with this idea and I went too much the other way and started shooting with really high ISO all the time, thinking that faster shutter speed would be better. But unfortunately, you can cross that line where image quality becomes a problem because you're shooting at fast shutter speeds with high ISO. Morty. And yes, another mistake, not working on editing. I really didn't enjoy editing after years of being a commercial photographer. I really hated spending all that time on the computer, and I was determined not to do it with bird photography. But unfortunately, editing is a little bit like icing on a cake. Morty. Birds.
Yes, a cake can be great without icing, but a little sweet magic can make an ordinary cake something special, and I really think it's worth your time to refine your editing skills. There are so many good tutorials out there for every type of editing suite. Being proficient at editing means you can spend less time on the computer, not more. After almost a year of deliberation, I finally did Jan Wegener's Lightroom Masterclass, and I highly recommend it if you use Lightroom. It really helped me to polish up my editing skills, and I even look forward to editing, even though I don't go to the lengths that Jan does and I keep it fairly simple. And my final big mistake was leaving Morty unattended in the pantry while I made this video. Happy birding and talk to you soon.
Morty!